And to Tristram and to everyone at the conference, thank you for the opportunity to chair the Gangs and Syndicate Roundtable last month, and for being able to present the summary findings today. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll attempt to summarize the key material that was presented and the conclusions that we've been able to draw. I apologize in advance that I will in no way be able to do justice to the 6 absolutely excellent presentations that our roundtable sessions were able to hear, and the quality conversations that we had afterwards. But I hope to be able to put out the key themes and conclusions from the 2 sessions. So on day 1, Felia Allen presented her research into comparative evidence from France, UK, and Italy around gangs and syndicates. In particular, she drew out the relationship between local and global criminal networks, and she highlighted the economic values that shape groups in different locations. And especially interesting in her analysis was the role of women in gangs and syndicates, something she argued was often overlooked and underplayed in shaping gang behavior. Adam Baird then followed with his research into the dramatic increase in murder rates in Port of Spain circa 2000. He made some important points about traditional analysis, typically looking at causal links between rising violence and rising drug flows. But this, he argued, is a very partial analysis and misses the effects of male identities and the context of pronounced exclusion. And thirdly, on day 1, Sergey presented fascinating new research into Italian mafia in Europe. She highlighted the different narratives that surround Italian mafias in different countries, generally a law enforcement generated narrative. And she pointed to the weaknesses of conflating ethnicity with criminal dynamics and with top-down law enforcement descriptors of the problem. On day 2, Cohen and Cohen spoke compellingly about Nigerian confraternities in Europe, having their roots in the 70s and 80s migration from that country. These have established chapters or zones in different parts of Europe, typically specializing in different crime types in different zones. And again, he pointed to the crude ethnicity-based analysis, sometimes even racist in its language, that misses local context, and which in any case is seldom shared country to country. Zora Hauser then provided further analysis of the need to move away from ethnicity as an indicator of crime or as an analytical tool. She argued that the context in which crime groups sit is more important than ethnicity. For example, factors such as social cohesion in local communities and in social mobility. And then finally, Mark Shaw presented his findings from researching cities in developing countries with high crime rates. He spoke about the need for understanding the local ecosystems, and especially the role of civil society actors, as opposed to law enforcement, to build alternative narratives and alternative visions of how communities should live, non-crime visions, for example. So you can see that there was much in common as I've summarized those 6 presentations. And in considering the material that was presented and in discussion after each presentation, what insights were we able to gain and what conclusions did we draw? Well, again, there's too much to provide this in full, but the following are the key points that we have distilled out of those 6 sessions. So an emerging theme from all the key speakers is the need for new data sets. Illicit trades are by nature secretive and underground. Data is scarce. What does exist is narrow and can often be a view from above. For example, it could be a police narrative or secondhand data, and both of these are incomplete in analyzing the problems. So we also need collaboration and strengthening of ties between academia and security. This was a very strong theme that came out probably in all 6 presentations. Also ties between security forces across borders. these, as we know, are already strong and vibrant, but there still isn't enough sharing of what we know across those borders. Thirdly, a better understanding of cross-border interconnectivity of the crime gangs themselves and the split between activities abroad and those activities which are home-based. The link between local and transnational, as Craig was saying earlier. A key theme across multiple presentations, as you heard in my earlier synthesis summary, was that of ethnicity. Ethnicity is too blunt a social instrument to measure and analyze serious and organized crime. Ethnicity is a social construct, it was argued. We should be framing it in terms of tight-knit subgroups, not ethnicity. Framing the debate in terms of tight-knit subgroups, not relying too heavily on ethnicity. Very interesting point as well that serious and organized crime is not an all-male story, as it is often told. There is a need for gender disaggregated data and to understand the role of women in illicit criminal activity. The role of the state, interestingly, also should be examined, especially in countries where state actors and criminality are intertwined, or where state and social services are weak. It's quite easy from the perspective of a developed country like the United Kingdom or other European countries, to assume that the kinds of levers we have available to us here are available in other parts of the world, where there is an intertwining between the state and the criminal fraternities, and where the kinds of levers that one can pull, like call the police, don't work the same way in other countries, and we need to avoid assuming that what works here works everywhere. Local symbolic activities need to be utilized as well by local change agents to empower communities and civil society actors. We must explore bottom-up grassroots processes to tackle serious organized crime and increase collaboration approaches, as top-down disruption is not always effective. And following on from that, supporting local civil society is key, bringing a political conscience to disenfranchised communities after decades of exclusion and marginalization must be prioritized. There are social levels as well beyond law enforcement. For example, symbolic responses like social institutions occupying gang spaces and reclaiming communities in a way that is visible to the community at large. And a point made continually by the presenters that context is crucial. We must zoom out and not just focus on criminality. What is happening? And ask ourselves, what is happening in these locations when gang-related homicides surge? We need to examine the social terrain and historic legacies of exclusion. We must ask ourselves how to remove gang structures without causing an implosion of violence if a power vacuum is removed. Reduction, not eradication. So 2 points there about the importance of working with communities and understanding the community context of in which a gang is operating. And finally, academic studies of firearms are lacking. A point was made, usually casually grouped with drugs, and this doesn't really help with understanding the issue. They're a commodity in themselves, and the linkage to the state is huge. So, in summary, and in conclusion, the roundtables established several important research-based conclusions about the shortcomings of analysis that rely too heavily on law enforcement narratives and on national perspectives. Instead, we need to get better at understanding the social factors behind gangs and syndicates, at sharing what we know cross-border, and being alert to crude ethnicity-based description. Thank you.